Got everything now ready. Thank you guys for coming. This is Dan Sullivan. I'm Justin Lamb, and we're RAD Engineering.
Yeah. We're going to talk today about something that can be really scary for a lot of people because of the times we live in. We live in times where you go to Walmart, something breaks, you go to Walmart, it breaks, you go to Walmart, and a lot of technology gets sold to people and they say, well, you can't fix this. Even tractors. You're a farmer, you buy a tractor, and they'll say, oh, you can't fix it, you don't have a right to fix it. Justin and I don't believe that. Justin is the CTO of RAD Engineering, I'm the CEO, and one of our philosophical goals, not just today during the presentation, but overall, is to get people to throw out that cult of learned helplessness. Because we do have it within our power to take charge of our lives. It is not impossible.
Did you start the camera, Dan?
It's going.
Okay, I had to check.
Tornadoes, floods, ice storms, wildfires, earthquakes and other types of geological events, EMP, solar flare, and what's called a Carrington event. And of course, our favorite, government censorship, government control. Transformers get blown out. These things happen in terrible disasters. Power lines get blown over. Your cell phone towers they can catch fire. Satellites can be destroyed. And roads can become impassable. This is something that can happen. The World Wide Web is made up of switches and controls, and these things can and do fail. And power stations, they often fall apart. They do. They often blow up. They sometimes fail us too. And when it comes to the parts you would need to fix any of these things, you have shortages. In a grid-down scenario, if you and your friends had to rebuild a power station, how would you do it? If you had to fix fiber cable, how would you do it? If you had to fix a microwave tower, what would you do first? If you took your mobile phone and you said it no longer works, how would you fix your mobile phone? How would you open it up and work on the microelectronics? If you had to make resistors, capacitors, diodes, and transistors from scratch, what would be your step one? And what if you had to launch a satellite? I don't know anybody that can do that themselves in their backyard.
Definitely nobody in this room can do that.
That's right. What we're going to talk about today is a very brief history of how we ended up here with respect to the internet and computing technology. We're going to talk about something called JS8 and the protocol behind JS8. Then Justin will introduce us to what the RAD terminal is as far as its component structure, how we build it, and what's most important, I want to emphasize it, how anybody in this room can do it themselves. Anybody could. This is not rocket science.
We have no secret sauce. Every resource that we have at our disposal is available to you via our website, radengineering.tech, and our YouTube channel.
That's right. We're going to talk about a roadmap because we are an engineering company, okay? And we are in the business to make money, but we want to educate people too. And we're going to talk about where we want to go with respect to this radio technology. And then finally, we will be open to all the questions and answers you guys have until we get kicked out of the room. Here are some ground rules. We are not ham licensed, and we are not discussing the use of ham frequencies. The FCC, like many federal agencies, is a mixture of bureaucracy and a lot of regulations that are poorly understood. We are not lawyers, we don't pretend to be lawyers, and if you have questions about the legality of anything we talk about, do your own due diligence, do your own investigation. This is also part of like breaking out of, can I do this? Can we do this? The answer is yes. And that's pretty much all we want to say about that. Archimedes, in the 3rd century BC, is believed to have built the first mechanical computer, an analog computer using gears. The Abacus, as a way to offload difficult arithmetic operations, has been around in various forms and in various cultures by different names for thousands of years. In the middle of the 17th century, a very famous mathematician by the name of Blaise Pascal developed one of the first true mechanical adding machines. This machine allowed him to do very complex mathematics, and that was a long time ago. In the middle of the 19th century, a man by the name of Charles Babbage, and I believe his mistress, Ada Lovelace, developed one of the first true computers. Now, it was steam-powered. This is a steampunk computer. And the version he wanted to build, the one that, and computer scientists have verified this, the version that Babbage wanted to build would have worked, and Ada's language she developed would have worked too. But that would have been a computer about the size of a small town, maybe even the size of a city. Lots of pipes, lots of hydraulics, but it would have worked. During the 1880 census in the United States of America, this was one of the first censuses that used a lot of demographic data. And we all know demographic data when we fill out the census. You know, what's your gender, how old are you, stuff like that. The problem was they didn't have an easy way to pull that data together. So a man by the name of Herman Hollerith, who's also involved in the founding of a company you might have heard of called IBM, developed one of the first punch card-based tabulating computers. Some people believe that this was one of the first true database systems. And database systems are more than just calculators. They allow you to sort information, sort it in different ways, calculate it in different ways. During World War II, the computer revolution really accelerated, again, government involvement. In the United States, we developed a computer that used vacuum tubes and relays called ENIAC. To program this computer, you had to rewire it, and it pretty much took up a few floors of a big building. It was used to calculate artillery tables. In Great Britain, they developed a machine called Colossus. Colossus was a similar type of computer, relays, vacuum tubes, but in this particular case, Colossus was used to break the German code Enigma. In 1948, and this is significant, the first transistor was tested, built, designed. This transistor replaced a bunch of relays, a bunch of vacuum tubes. If you can imagine this section of the table filled with vacuum tubes and relays, that transistor, which was still very big, replaced all of it. And by the 1950s, transistors became small enough they could fit on your thumb. The next significant event, again, government involvement, was Minuteman I. Minuteman I was the first cold-launch ballistic missile, which means it used solid rocket motors, which means you push a button, it goes out. But they wanted a whole new type of guidance system. The first microchips, the chips that all other chips would be based on, came out of the Minuteman I program. And during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Department of Defense, along with private institutions, developed something called ARPANET. Originally, this was for email and research between institutions. I believe Berkeley and UCLA are famous in 1969 for doing the first computer-to-computer over telephone line communication. But ARPANET in many ways became the foundation of what we call the World Wide Web. And in 1993, Tim Berners-Lee developed something called HTML. We all know what it is because we use the web all the time. The language that renders, well, allows the computer to render colors, shapes, pictures, all of that. That language was developed by Tim Berners-Lee in 1993. Well, actually, probably before that, it was released in 93. By the 2000s, everybody's got a smart device. Some of them did well, some of them didn't do so well. We all know Android and iPhone. And that more or less takes us to where we are today, which is the digital ghetto. If you want to understand one of the reasons why we're doing this, is we want people to have a way out. We don't have to be stuck. I grew up in a place they call it the land of the free and the home of the brave. That's the country that we believe in. That we were born free, nobody gave it to you. And part of what we want to do is give people a possibility to build organic social networks completely outside the confines of any of this. So what is the theme here? Well, if you've noticed, and I can't go back to the 3rd century, but if you've noticed, there's been a connection between government and computing technology that goes back hundreds of years. All governments have been interested in computer technology for a very long time. And when I say computers, basic computers back in the day, like I said, gears, steampunk, nothing like we understand today. But the ability to offload computation, has been a human desire and a rational one probably since the beginning. One could argue that language itself was developed as a way to offload calculation, to share a problem, with your community. But the theme I think we need to keep in mind is, like I said, especially the last 50 years of computerization, the government has had a place that it wants people to go, and it's had a place it doesn't want people. It puts cheese. Here's cheese. You can get yourself an iPhone for 50 bucks. Here's a brick wall. You want to get yourself a radio? Well, we're going to make that difficult. It's not one, you're not going to get subsidies.
Yeah, you have to pay full price.
You're going to pay full price for that radio. You're not going to pay full price for that smart device, which I think is ironically named. What we're doing is based upon something called JS8 and the JS8 protocol. It is an 8-tone system that allows digital information to be transmitted over something like CB radio, but it can be ham radio frequencies, higher frequencies. Currently, because we're trying to protect the radios we work with, and again, we're designing for something like a regular CB radio with single sideband.
$150 CB radio can do everything that we're talking about here today.
Yeah. Currently, though, we're keeping it at around 500 characters every 10 minutes. You're not going to be downloading pictures. Well, you can download pictures other ways. You're not going to be downloading movies. You're not going to be downloading music. But if what you want is an organic, voluntary social network, today using JS8 call, you could build that yourself. And in the United States, 11 meters, more and more every day, people are coming on board. Now, on 20 meters and 40 meters, and just to get through some radio lingo, and you can correct me, these are wavelengths, okay? So essentially, if you have a transmission antenna, it has to match the wavelength of what you're broadcasting on. But the ham frequencies, 20 meters and 40 meters, lots of people are using JS8 call.
Thousands every day.
Yeah. As we mentioned to some gentlemen before the presentation, this is an open source project, primarily written in C++. It's based upon work that was done at Princeton many years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, developing something called FT8, which was a protocol for basically sending location information, call signs, stuff like that, digitally, again, textual information, over the airwaves. And, right now, if you want to download it, you just go to jsa-call.com. And if you have a working radio antenna system, single sideband on the radio, a computer, and I use Linux, but you can use Windows, you've used it with Windows, and the right connectors, and Justin will talk about that in a second, you can set this up yourself. And this, again, is one of the themes we're trying to put out there. We can do this ourselves. Okay, we've been told for a long time there are things we can't do. But what if they're lying? What if they're just trying to keep us from having control of our lives? Now, Justin, what is the RAD terminal?
It's very simple. Dan has already gone over all the basic. Maybe we give them a cable or something here. I don't know. It'll be all right. We can go without if we have to. Very simple. This is $150 CB radio. Anybody can buy it. Google it. You'll find it online. $150 in the mail coming to you. This acts as the modem. If you want to think back to the early days of the internet, dial-up internet, maybe some of you had AOL and remember the beeps and the boops. This transmits the beeps and the boops. Here is a Raspberry Pi computer. Any computer will work if it's a modern computer. Newer than 10 years old now, should work just fine. You download the JS8 call software on the computer. The computer generates the beeps and the boops, and with a couple of custom-made cables that you can build yourself, guys. This is very easy. Some wire cutters. We've got a soldering iron here. These are very basic skills. You can make these cables your own, yourself. We have all the guides online on YouTube. The videos are free for anyone to access. As well as we've made ourselves available. If you guys had questions about building your own cables, we'd be happy to help you get started. For a cheaper radio like this, we're using what's called an Easy Digi kit. This is a $7 kit that you can buy on eBay. Easy Digi. You just type that in and it'll pop right up. You can put it together yourself or you can buy it pre-built. Either way, you have to, depending on the radio you're using and depending on the computer you have, is going to determine which wires are connected. Again, we are available to help you figure out what will work on your computer. These are the basic components plus an antenna. Here we have this is a homemade dipole antenna. You can make this antenna yourself at home for $5. Stereo wire is super cheap. They basically give this stuff away. You can buy 200 feet of wire for $30. I don't know how they do it so cheap. If you try to wire your house and get 30 feet or 100 feet of wire, you're going to pay well over $100. So how they sell this stuff for 30 bucks, I don't know, but it works great. This antenna is going to be 18 feet long to operate on citizen band radio. It's 11 meters. No license required. To change the wavelength or the band, you simply lengthen the antenna or shorten it. If you want to work 10 meters, 80 meters, whatever, simply you change the length of the wire. I didn't bring with me the coax cable. It's hooked up, but that's the final component. These are all you need to build your system, the system yourself. You get the antenna, an antenna like this, strung up in a tree between two trees, with the coax cable going up to it, into the radio room onto your table, hook it up to the radio. You're going to wire the most complicated. Like I said, we're here to tell you that you can do this yourself. It's extremely simple. These are the basic components of the RAD terminal. Again, all the tools you need, some wire cutters, these are some crimpers. We've got, I like to use quick connects for all my batteries, so all the radios I have are interchangeable. I use the same connectors, and these, it's just brain dead simple. There's nothing complicated here. You can do all of this. Basic diagnostic tools. We got a multimeter. You're going to be using ohms, and you're going to be testing voltage. Very simple stuff. YouTube videos galore on how to do this. Again, no secret sauce. This is a $9 shortwave radio that I got at a Radio Shack at a going out of business sale. This was probably the last Radio Shack I've ever seen. It was in Vernal, Utah, no longer there. $9. I can diagnose and test this entire system with this $9 radio to determine if my signal's getting out and the quality of the signal. We're going to get a little bit more fancy. If you're looking to build your own antennas, there are these tools are called antenna analyzers. This one is 4 years old. I paid $500 for it. The technology has upgraded. You can get a VNA antenna analyzer for $50. Does the exact same thing that this tool does. Get it today. They're still available. They're brand new technology. My warning to everybody in this room is time is of the essence. We all know the supply chain issues. Everybody's having issues. But the fact is, this was actually made in, Dan, help me out, in, who's battling the Russians right now? The Ukrainian. Made in Ukraine, you're not going to be getting one of these. I'm sorry, they're unavailable. The ones made in China are still available. All these radios, I don't know a single radio built in America. This radio comes from China. This is a Japanese company that manufactures their radios in China. These products are all getting harder to find. DX Engineering, our supplier for radios, is currently out of stock. They say they're going to have more the 28th of this month. So if you are wanting us to build you a kit, it's going to be at least that long before we'll even have your radio in stock. Yeah, you have a question?
But is that antenna analyzer actually necessary, or you just did that because you're an engineering?
Well, if you want to make homemade antennas, you run the coax cable from here to your antenna analyzer, and you would do this in place. You would have it strung up wherever it's going to be. You hit a couple of buttons. You tell the frequency. We operate on 27.245. So I'm going to type that number into the analyzer. I'm going to hit analyze. And it's going to tell me if my SWR is in the proper range to operate on that frequency.
But if I cut the length for your directions, it should work?
Yes.
Okay.
So I could, if you were to replicate this, send me a picture of what you had. I could tell you exactly how long to cut this antenna, and I would be happy to do that to anybody in this room. There are rough numbers. I could say 18 feet 6 inches, and that'll get you in the ballpark. And with even this cheap radio right here has a built-in SWR meter. I'm sure you guys, if you're not familiar with radio, don't know what SWR is, but essentially there's a window where an antenna is efficient here at the bottom and doesn't work at all on the sides. So this dip occurs where the antenna is most efficient at. And you want that efficient spot, the low dip on your SWR, to be on the channel you're operating. If you're trying to operate here and the low spot is over here, you'll burn your radio up. So these are things that we'll help educate you on, but you need to know before you operate. And this is what makes 11 meters different from ham radio. Ham radio, you have to take the test to prove that you already know this information. 11 meters is learn as you go. I don't want you to destroy your radio. I'd be happy to help every one of you properly install an antenna so it won't burn up your radio. But these are concepts that you're going to learn along the way. So let me check my notes here, make sure I didn't forget anything. But let's see. Okay, so I've gone over all the physical components of what makes up the RAD terminal. DAN software is an integral part of improving JS8 call. JS8 call, if you don't take anything else out from what we're talking about, and you already have a radio, and you already have a computer, I implore you, build your EasyDigi interface kit, $20, and hook your computer up to your radio and get JS8 call. But on top of that, we're adding features, simplifying operations with our node system, which allows messages that are received on your CB radio to be pushed to the internet for anybody to view. So if your neighbor down the road sends out a message that says, I have a truck for sale, your radio will receive that and post that to a public bulletin board, essentially, that anybody can access, no login, anybody can view it and do what they will with that information. Obviously, you're not going to share secrets, not without encryption, which is a tool that we make available on our website. Anybody can use, free to use. You type in your message, encrypt it, and send it over the airwaves if you're looking to send a secret message. It will still be posted to the bulletin board, but it can only be decrypted if the person has the password to decrypt that. And that's a whole other lesson. We have videos on our YouTube channel on how to do that. We won't go too much into that here and now. This is point-to-point contact. There is no fiber optic cable. There's no satellites. There's no cell towers. There's no servers. Your computer that you hook up to your radio saves all the information. Computers can send queries to your computer to say, what information do you have about trucks for sale? And your computer will automatically send that information back with DAN software that we're developing. Again, that's free to download, not available yet. We're still testing. We're setting up our flagship station in Puerto Rico, who connects with Europe on a daily basis. And to clarify, I don't know if anyone said this yet, but we're talking thousands of miles. We're not talking 2 miles down the road. It'll do that. You can cover the entire Salt Lake Valley with a $150 CB radio with digital communications. You may not be able to do voice from here to Ogden, but you can do digital data because the equation would be, this is an AM voice signal. We all know AM radio. Most CBs operate on AM only. With single sideband, this is your AM signal. A single sideband is literally half of an AM signal. We're working with an even narrower 1/100th of an AM signal. Think of a spotlight or a floodlight versus a laser beam. We're focusing the same energy that's in this signal into a narrow, tiny signal that will go 90 miles on this radio. We'll go thousands and thousands of miles with a higher quality radio. You can still get over the horizon communication with 5 watts, but you can reliably communicate the entire Salt Lake Valley with a $150 CB radio. And these will still work. I have personally, with voice mode, talked to Seattle on this radio from Salt Lake City, Utah. So these are all the possibilities that we're talking about here. We've gone over that.
Basically, I mean, like you said, I mean, these are the components, pretty straightforward. It's expandable, right, Dustin?
Yeah, oh yeah. There are software applications out there in the ham world that we have not even touched upon at RAD Engineering. We're 2 guys, we have very limited resources, but there's WinLink, which is great for FM, very high data rate. You can send an email faster than you can type it out with WinLink, but that's going to be more local. Newer CB radios FM has recently been approved for use on 11 meters by the FCC. All these systems will work with that and are open to be expanded. So none of this is something that, oh, well, if I buy this and a year later, I'm going to have to buy new technology. No, everything that we're working with, everything that we promote at RAD Engineering, it can be built upon itself. You'll never have to upgrade it. Now, if you start out with a $150 CB radio, maybe years down the line you decide, well, I want a higher quality radio, and you can do that. You're free to do that. But everything we're offering now works on a $150 CB radio.
That's right. Bottom line is flexibility, right to repair is the philosophy, part of the philosophy that we're trying to spread, but this is a philosophy spreading all over the engineering world. Cooperative and voluntary, which means the more stations that get set up, the more powerful the network becomes. Which means even if you can't talk from A to D, if you can talk to C, and C, B, and B can talk to C, you can talk to D. The more stations we get up, the more storing forward and relaying we can do.
And that's already built into the JSA call, and we're working on improving that relay system that's already built in. Go ahead.
So are you describing a mesh network?
No, mesh network is great for a place like Salt Lake. If you're wanting information from one end of the valley to the other, mesh will do that. What we're offering is over the horizon, thousands of miles of communication that cannot be achieved with mesh. Now perhaps somewhere like Europe, you can hook enough routers together, Wi-Fi routers together, that all of Europe could talk to each other. They have a much more dense population. We're out west, we have wide swaths of uninhabited space that no Wi-Fi router, no matter the amplification or fine-tuning of the antenna, can cover the distances required to make it from here to Denver or from here to Las Vegas. With CB radio, we can do these things. So we look at a bridge. We would love to incorporate mesh networks. You open up your computer to a mesh network, that network can access your hub and send data out through your terminal with your permissions.
Well, but you sort of described that. You said to get from A to D, you might have to go from B to C. So
that means other stations like this, other CB stations.
Okay, so then I need to leave my PC on when I'm
No, it's cooperative and voluntary. It's up to you.
But if I leave it on at night, other people can use my...
If you want to do that, one of the things we want to be really careful about is you control your radio and you control what you want to do with it. There's a concept in engineering called failover. If we build a big enough network of people doing JS8, there'll be lots of failover, and you'll be able to turn off your station and turn it on if you don't want to, because another station somewhere nearby can play the same role.
And also built into the software that's already available is, say your station is turned off, but your neighbor up the road leaves his on at night and receives messages for you. When you activate your station, it will notify you saying, hey, I have messages for you.
Okay.
So a very powerful function of JSA call.
It's a very powerful tool. Just to summarize what Justin was saying, this is the complexity of the network we're talking about, which is a lot like what you see right here. But if you notice, the network you really go through on the internet, there's lots of places your messages go.
Fail point, fail point, fail point, fail point, fail point, all along a chain. Any one of these can break. Fibers can be hit with a backhoe. Power plants can burn down that supply any one of these with electricity, none of which we have access to or we have the right to repair.
Or they even want us to know how to repair. They don't want us to understand how to fix the things that they've made us so dependent upon, and that's a really critical point.
Go ahead.
So I want to communicate with my son in Kansas. He needs to have a station set up.
Not necessarily. Because of the voluntary, cooperative environment already in radio, if there is a station in Kansas near your son, it is expected that they would relay the message. Even if it's you provide them with a physical address to go by, this is already done in the ham world. They do a practice when you get a new license. And if any of you guys are licensed technicians, maybe you got a call from a stranger saying, hey, congratulations on getting your exam. Or you got a letter from somebody in Germany saying, hey, good job, I can't wait to talk to you on the air. It's a great culture where people voluntarily help others. And all that is expected in return is that if somebody asked you to help them contact a loved one in the Salt Lake area, that you return the favor. So the key word there is this is all voluntary. If you don't want to, go ahead in the back.
Fine, just 40
Oh, okay,
minutes.
40 minutes, that's right. Okay, thank you.
So, what can you do with the RAD terminal, Dustin?
Oh my gosh, what can't you do? Okay, so we got to kind of blow through this a little faster than what I wanted to. But let's start with the easy stuff. Peer-to-peer chatting. You can talk to your buddy in Kansas City or your son in Kansas City, back and forth, no problem. That's very doable. Now, depending on where you're at geographically, keep in mind that if you can't do this and see over the mountains, you're probably not going to get out. But this system is portable enough that you can drive it to the top of a mountain and talk to the whole world just about. Games. I'm going to kind of jump around here. Text-based games. Think about chess, checkers, Dungeons and Dragons, all those old text-based games in the early days of computer. We can do that all over JS8 call as it is right now today. Our software will improve all these applications. Educate. If you have books, the other guy has books, we can share this information that we have physically stored in our house with anybody who needs it. If you have information on how to do a tracheotomy and somebody in Wyoming, middle of nowhere, has no access to a doctor but needs to perform a tracheotomy, we can voluntarily supply that information. Let's see, what else? The bulletin board. We have internet. Internet still works, so we're going to take advantage of that. And any message that is received on your computer while it's connected to the internet is posted to the notes, which is publicly viewable anywhere in the world. Dan, I'm going to let you cover the news.py.
Simply put, we did a demo a few weeks ago. A gentleman, a cattleman, said, can you put my news links, my headlines, can you put news on CB radio? We had a week to put together a demo, and with less than about 600 lines of Python code using JS8, we were sending out headlines with hooks that allowed people to get the full article text, like they'll get the hook and say, oh, can you give me the full article? All of it using the radio, the computer, and just the airwaves. And anybody can pick up those headlines. So anyone can say, if they're on JS8, wow, we had people listening in on this because, again, it was making an impression. So there's a lot you can do. Like if you were in a local community with JS8 and other people had the setups, you could be letting people know what you have for sale that day. Buy, sell, trade, you name it. This is a way to keep commerce functioning in very difficult situations. And then let's just think about this. Let's say you're a journalist in a country where they throw the switch. You can't use internet. Well,
China, Cuba, places, this is already happening all over the world.
Yeah. This is a tool that would allow a journalist in a very difficult situation, even in North Korea, to get out a news article about what's actually going on versus what we're told is going on. Here's our roadmap. And again, I'm going to be very quick about this. As long as we get the funding and we can keep going, we want to take JS8 call. It's currently written in C++. And we want to convert it to a set of Python modules. The reason for this is that a lot of people use Python for automating and improving their Linux environments and their other environments, and a lot of people are hobbyists who use Python. So it allows people to use these tools in a way that has a lower, not necessarily a lower threshold of entry, but not as annoyingly complex. We want to clean up the code base so that installation and setup isn't so difficult. Right now we're using JS8, and we're using no encoding at all. But our goal is to work on encoding strategies and potentially other modulation, sound, tone strategies to improve what we can do over CB.
This will improve bandwidth, make larger messages travel faster and further. Go ahead.
So you're talking about things like frequency shifting, phase shifting, and stuff like that?
In this case, it's more like the 8-tonal system is designed to have a kind of handshake behavior like TCP/IP, and to get the verbiage going away, it allows for a communication event that you can verify happened. Like you know you got the whole message. So it's not that. It's a modulation. There's no frequency shifting. The only part about it, there's offsetting, which is where you have many people kind of in that chat room. If you want to think of it that way, there are offsets off frequency. So if you're on 27.245, every participant within that frequency location will have an offset off of 27.245. Does that make sense?
Basically, we can
Okay. One of our goals is to build an all-in-one clamshell system which would be not the homebrew kit we're talking about today, but a complete system with shielding. That's a goal for 2023. And beyond that, our main goal today, and really for as long as we can, is again, to talk about how anybody can do this. This is doable. We don't really have to, we don't have to get caught up in that belief that everything's throwaway and everything has to be fixed by somebody else. So we're trying to spread the message that a lot of people can do this themselves. People can use soldering irons. This is not a difficult thing to learn to do. People can learn to test circuits for continuity. People can learn to protect their equipment from an EMP. It's possible to figure out alternative power supply systems. My friend Justin, over like a couple of days, took an old exercise bike and converted it so he could charge his deep cell battery. So these are things
You're going to get a sweat going before it's charged, though, I guarantee you that.
We can learn instead of throwing away electronics, and listen, this is important, people might think I'm crazy, but instead of throwing away electronics, we can learn to scavenge, because we might have to do that for a while. Not forever, but for a while to fix the things we have. We can believe in ourselves, we can get over the learned helplessness, and as we learn skills, we can be teachers. We can teach others. That's part of this too. You know, Justin and I are two people. We're not going to do more than what we can do. But
Radio, because radio is cool. You can talk to people thousands of miles away. You say, hello, is anybody out there? And a random stranger is going to come back. Social media has us in a box, basically an echo chamber. You're going to only hear from people who have the same views as you. You're not going to be exposed to people like Dan and his podcast, banned from YouTube, banned from Twitter, you name it. Not going to happen on CB radio. It physically cannot be done. It is impossible. I'm going to keep it short because we're running out of time. Dan, I'd like you to close out.
when I was a kid, I could go to a Radio Shack and they sold kits. These were toys for kids at Christmas where you actually built basically a spark gap radio for broadcasting over AM yourself with a little Morse code keypad. You could go down the aisle, they had resistors, capacitors, transistors, diodes, they had everything you needed. Up until a few years ago, if I wanted to work on my computer, there's a place called Fry's Electronics, and they had bays you could go there, and tools set out, and you could do it yourself. Fry's is gone. Radio Shack is gone.
There's one in Pine City, Minnesota.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That's the only one I know of.
A Fry's?
Radio Shack.
Radio Shack.
There's one in Ajo, Arizona too.
But you'll find a Home Depot and a Walmart everywhere. You go to a Home Depot and say, can you help me remodel my bathroom? You'll get 5 people showing up. I'll show you how. You ask them, even if they had the coax cable, you say, can you help me set up a shortwave antenna? And their eyes will blossom.
Right.
Okay, we are here because of things that happen. And to be blunt, from my perspective, and we don't have time for it, decisions were made that they never involved us in. But we don't have to keep going down this road, and frankly speaking, we don't have a choice. If we want to protect our communities and our families, we have to give up on learned helplessness, and we have to start taking control of the technology again. So we are open for questions.
Can we check the time real quick?
We got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so-
we have to be out a little bit before, just so that.
Okay, yeah, so a few minutes for questions. Go ahead.
How do we contact you?
What's that?
How do we contact you?
radengineering.tech, and we have flyers come by our booth. We have all our contact information. What's the booth number, Dan?
It's 412 and 313 or
Yeah.
something like that. But
You
we're
can't
near
miss it.
Pyro Putty. If you've
Yeah,
seen
right
Pyro
next to
Putty.
Pyro.
Which row are you on?
I'm sorry?
You on the end of row 1?
3.
Row 3.
Go down 300 and the roofing guys are right across. there.
Can't miss Pyro Putty. You find them, we're right next to
If you
them.
see a Chevy, like a 1970 Chevy in Pyro Putty, we're right there.
Yep. Anything else? Guys, thank you so much for coming by. It means the world that you guys gave us the time to listen to our presentation, and we hope to hear all of you guys on the air very soon. And we're happy to help you get there. Reach out to us. Thank you.
So the software you're developing would allow you to do queries and receive text messages?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, the work I'm doing, just about any competent Python programmer can be doing it. If you like playing with Python, we're going to have the source code available, code we're working on within a few weeks. and it's fairly basic Python. The news.py is designed as an RSS service, but there's a lot of things. You can take that news.py, and like I said, you can be telling people what you have to sale. I have fruit, I have vegetables. Go ahead.
So you got a little keyboard
Yeah.
and send it out.
Yep.
And your software is the one that sends it out.
It sends it out. It receives the message. It pulls it from the database. The Python bridge regulates how many of those messages go to your radio. So there's a regulation process because, like I said, we're trying to err on the side of caution.
Right.
Radios are not cheap and they're not plentiful.
Okay. All right, guys, so that's what the software does.
Yep. And any more questions, you guys feel free to swing by the booth. We're going to be here all day, so, but we've got to clear the room out now for the next group. So thank you guys again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.